Hello, Void. So, what am I doing here dressed like the third worst movie Joker? We've been talking about guys around here on the online left for a bit, but the majority of conversation about whether the left is doing right by a potential or existing male audience right now is caught up in Andrew Tate. And I don't blame y'all. It's probably because of the recent, sex trafficking, money laundering, gang arrest. Fair. But to me, Andrew Tate and the other pickup artists type of audience is a different genre or subgenre typology of these guys who fall into the pipelines, the pipeline guys. Andrew Tate represents an aspirational lifestyle for guys who have more normative aspirations. Girls, cars, money, wearing a bathrobe, smoking a cigar next to a plane, and as a certified weird bitch myself, I can't claim nearly as much authority on the subject of normal guys and their normal misogynist entertainment figures, but I want to steer the conversation towards a group of pipeline guys that see themselves as intellectuals, that want to be rewarded as intelligent and praised for their difference. And that's where they want the girls and the money to come from. The guys who look up to right-wing figures they see as philosophers and geniuses over figures they see as top G's. The guys with whom weird girls like me tend to have closer interpersonal relationships. The, for lack of a better term, weird guys. Reject modernity, embrace tradition rhetoric proliferates among the MRA men's rights activist movements. Now, this is often because they believe that the past has worked for men in a way that the present doesn't. And when they discuss the ways that men are discriminated against in modern society, some of the things they bring up are paternity rights and being believed when it comes to domestic violence accusations. Now, all of these things do in some way or another stem from patriarchy, but that is another video essay. And those two in particular have been debunked-ish, which I will discuss in the description or leave some stuff here, because this one, we're going to talk about college. Now, the one statistic that men's rights activists have that I have really looked into, because as I'm a stinky liberal cack who is a feminist, gets into arguments with these guys online instead of going outside or looking at the sun. So one of these statistics for which I couldn't really come up with any form of response was college. Now, depending on who you ask, between 40 and 45-ish% of college students are male, whereas by that amount, the majority then, between 60 and 55%, are female. Now, MRAs tend to blame second wave feminism on getting women out of the house and taking their spots for jobs in the workforce. And I think this is more of a correlation than a causation issue, because the changes that happened in the amount of people required to enroll in college began during the late 70s, early 80s era of Reaganomics and global neoliberalism, in which low-skill jobs became exported out of our country, and therefore any American worth their salt needed to go to college and get a nice desk job where they didn't materially do much of anything. In the 70s, women did enter the workforce in large numbers, and maybe the economy couldn't keep up. But all of this is besides the point. These lower enrollments for males in college are a part of a trend of depressed men who don't see a way forward in their life. You can look at the numbers of school shootings. Now, I think that this dissatisfaction with the modern mode of life is because nowadays those men lack a clearly defined path that offers them guaranteed power. Now, what is that? What was that? The majority of the rhetoric of a men's rights activist tends to look back to the era of the 1950s. Now, in the 1950s, men had a clearly defined path with guaranteed power. Clearly defined path, they were guaranteed a comfortable, middle-class lifestyle with benefits and health care, and enough vacation days to not lose their minds on a blue-collar job where they could retire, get a pension, buy a house, take care of their family on one single salary, and guaranteed power. No matter how little power they had in the workplace, these men were guaranteed one woman and her children to own and control in their own little bubble, create a sphere of relaxation for himself separate from the workplace, with the woman serving as his own personal mommy sex maid. The women in these situations were on drugs to function, powerless to escape abuse, lacked their own communities, financial security. But if we think about it, it was great for the men. The 1950s ending with the sexual revolution might have seemed pretty hunky-dory and groovy to the men then, but now men are starting to see some of the declines for them personally that come from more liberated, educated, and thinking women. There's no more guarantee of that stable job because of changes to the economy, but there's also no more guarantee of that mommy sex maid, that woman that you can own. Because women now, since we can get our own jobs, open our own bank accounts, we don't have to rely on a man for economic security. So we can say no. Now, the problem with this, to men, is that if all women can say no, then there's a chance that no women will say yes. These men feel that they have lost this guarantee of a partner, a family, especially in the traditional format where they just get to own their partner and they don't really have a partner, they have a mommy sex pet. As many women nowadays are actually choosing celibacy, including straight women. A lot of this has happened in certain women feeling that it's not worth the risk to engage in male partnered relationships in the post-Roe era, especially if they live in states that have stronger regulations around abortion. As well as many women are starting to realize that hookup culture is often not beneficial for us because of the way the double standards with which we are treated by our peers in comparison to our male partners in hookup culture. And so many women are simply choosing not to participate, finding female community, and realizing that we can be just as happy on our own. The problem with that, for men, is that they don't have a model of a life to live without this nuclear family owning one partner situation. And so they feel they've lost it. The problems here with the male psyche are that male self-image is based on themselves as the breadwinners, because that's the way that it's been for a majority of our culture, and media and familial expectations still tend to dictate that men should be living that kind of lifestyle. Similarly, male status under patriarchy, especially with other men, comes from their power over women and children, especially as they age. And it's confusing because there's no guaranteed path, and there's no more guaranteed power. I'm not telling you to feel bad for the men and try to petition for them to get their mommy sex maids back. I'm simply saying that from their perspective, in their experience, they've lost power, even if it's unjust power that harms others. And I know it's an overused quote, but when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. These people's lived experience is having their control over others, over society, over the culture decrease, even if just a little bit. Now, the weird guys, which we will get into, will gravitate towards figures that validate the goodness of their power, the morality of it, the justice, so that they can believe that if they're comfortable, so are the women and children they seek to control. Right, I'm sure you've heard enough about the top G lately, so I will make this very brief. I'm using Andrew Tate as sort of a counterpoint to the weird guy figures that I'm bringing up, because Tate appeals to a much more conventional idea of masculinity. He shows a classy yet trashy opulent lifestyle where he brags about sex and is a major anti-intellectual, especially with his whole I don't know if he can read. I kind of doubt it. Andrew Tate focuses on the optics of masculinity, of a specific dirty, grubby, loud, stinky, anti-intellectual masculinity. Whereas the weird guys of masculinity appeal to, well, the weird guy. Now, what is the appeal of Bordan Pee Jeterson? Of all the accents that I do in these stupid videos that no one watches, I just picked the one video with all the accents that I can't do. Bordan Pee Jeterson comes from what is known as the intellectual dark web, and he considers himself an intellectual, and so do many of his fans. I mean, he was a professor, he's a doctor, and those sorts of points validate him as an intellectual figure that men who consider themselves intellectuals are able to look up to. So he appeals to the nerd guys, the nerd weird guys. He posits himself as rational and coming from a place of rationality, which is respected in our culture, but specifically in the nerd culture from which the weird guys come. He offers then, through the frame of rationality and intellectualism, a world where they have a defined path and guaranteed power. Also, he cries on camera, which is sometimes seen as at odds with his vision of traditional masculinity, but I think it becomes both relatable and aspirational to the weird guys who do things that are at odds with traditional masculinity, but they still want to fit into the hegemonic order and have their guaranteed path and their guaranteed power. Our other weird guy icon that we're going to be talking about today is Mr. Elongated Muskrat, Twitter ruiner himself. Elon Musk, whether he invented anything or simply bought patents and banned people from saying that he didn't invent anything, is selling an idea that he is smart, and him being smart makes him successful. This appeals to weird guys because weird guys are smart, generally, or they consider themselves to be smarter than other guys because their pastimes tend to have been more intellectual rather than roughhousing as children, and that often made them feel isolated. Elon Musk speaks to that isolation and says that that is a good thing, that being different is good because capitalism would reward it. Elon Musk claims that the status quo is what weird guys need, and this appeals to them because then they don't have to work for change, and they get to be successful from their perceived intelligence. As a side note, on Saturday Night Live, Elon Musk told everyone that he was autistic. This neurodivergency is a major underlying theme in this entire conversation around weird guys. I'm using weird because it's a word everyone knows. You can kind of picture him in your head. He is really into the lore of Star Wars. He's sweaty. He has a superiority complex and an inferiority complex at the same time. I probably would have wanted to date him in high school. I would date him now if he wasn't a misogynist. Weird is often a stand-in for neurodivergent, and especially autistic. And Elon Musk is one of the few autistic celebrities, icons, media figures in a world where autistic representation is basically just Sheldon Cooper and people on TikTok who pretend to have DID. And it's easier for the weird guys to ignore the facets of Elon Musk's image that are more quote-unquote problematic, misogynistic, bootstrap ideology, willingness to engage with other members of the online right, because they're not marginalized on quite as many other axes. So when they come to see their marginalization as weird, as neurodivergent in their relationships with other men and with the world at large, they're able to reassert power over women by following such neurodivergent male icons as Elon Musk, whose issues they are capable of writing off. Yassified Joker is back with some disclaimers. The fact that these situations happen does not mean that the onus is on anyone to date or even befriend these guys, because those things require mutual consent on an individual level. I mean, the whole Ariana Grande didn't kill Mac Miller. It's not the woman's job to love a man until he changes his mind about doing a shooting. But I do want to say that outside of the individual level, on a macro level, if we lived beyond such strict constructions of normativity, weird people and weird guys who are more likely to go and commit violence because of their feelings of marginalization, as well as the ways that that intersects with their privileges, would be much more likely to find communities. And finding community is pretty much the cure to brainworms, honestly. Hello world, a weird guy is born. This little tale is about to get anecdotal, but I hope you'll bear with me, as you will probably recognize this type of person from your own lives and circles. I know these guys. I love these guys. I can't get any more specific because, well, I know them, and I'm not trying to start any more shit at Thanksgiving. But the weird guy notices he's different from childhood. In elementary school, when people become aware of themselves, he is aware that he does not behave or even exist correctly. He may not be into roughhousing, as is expected of a male child, and his father may be either upset out of a desire for his son to be treated well by his peers, or a desire to reproduce masculine hegemony. Either way, quiet and strange, or just weird guy, will draw the ire of his peers from a very young age. Weird guy is most likely white and middle or upper middle class, since he has the ability to have his most immediate and physiological needs met enough to concern himself with self-actualization. He also needs enough privilege to use to overcompensate for his weirdness later on. Weird guy experiences social isolation in a general environment. He doesn't fit into popular ideas of masculinity, but being acculturated into patriarchy means he will bring those ideas and actions to the weird girls who, well. Besides, the life of a weird girl is inherently more gender nonconforming because femininity is a much narrower ideal to which women are held more strongly. So the weird girl tends not to take too much shit. Without the support of the mainstream group, or the weird girls, weird guy is lonely, and loneliness is a proven predictor of the alt-right pipeline back when alt-right pipeline was the term for this movement. Weird guy, being a modern man, escapes to the internet. He is likely enmeshed in nerd culture, but it does not quite mirror the shame and rage inside him. After all, weird guy is growing up after most of Gamergate has diffused. Still, he has a similar mentality. He's been sidelined his whole life for non-normative behavior, and has probably decided this is because he is just too smart for everyone else. He sees himself in internet nerd boy culture's self-crowned king, Elon Musk. Elon Musk didn't invent Tesla cars, but he bought the rights to say he did. He may not have been a self-made bootstrap guy or a real inventor, but he captured the imaginations of weird guys the world over, because he was one. He was a weird guy with money and fame and news organizations, at least for a while, fawning over his apparent genius. He described himself as a technologist, appealed to nerd culture, and was open about his neurodivergency on SNL. In a world full of alpha males bragging about muscles and sex, Weird Guy saw himself as a possible success in the image of Elon Musk. If a weird guy like that could succeed in capitalism, he reasons, so will I. This framework fits into what he's been told his whole life, too, by well-meaning middle-class parents and teachers and school counselors. They're just jealous because you'll be their boss one day. And Weird Guy believes he will. He sets up a crypto profile if he has any spare change. He listens to Elon Musk's increasingly right-wing opinions above all else. He watches the now infamous quartering video, in which the quartering takes up Musk's mantle and begs people to help him petition Musk to stay on as Twitter CEO. The quartering treats this issue with urgency and importance, as well as calls it a culture war issue. Quartering fits slightly within the realm of weird guys, with his affinity for nerd culture, meaning our weird guy is more likely to trust him. Here, Weird Guy officially takes up the mantle of culture warrior. And in 2022, he sees Bordan Pee Jeterson, a figure known as a member of the intellectual dark web, banned from Twitter. Then he sees Elon Musk bravely defend him against censorship. Weird Guy, who considers himself an intellectual, checks it out. Weird Guy reads testimonies from others saying Bordan Pee Jeterson fixed, saved their lives, showed them how to have control. Our guy longs for control. He remembers the movies released in the 80s where teenage boys went wild and then went to college and cleaned up and found a ready-made wife and had a ready-made family over which they had near total control. He remembers TV from the 50s, where teenage boys were rebels without a cause and then got to work in Dad's auto shop and cleaned up and had a ready-made wife and their high school sweetheart all along, and when they got married at 20 and had 3 kids they could support on just his income, he had near total control. The modern world isn't looking so good from our weird guy's perspective. So our weird guy watches and reads the segments in which Bordan Pee Jeterson argues that sexual harassment in the workplace is at least in part due to women's use of sexually provocative makeup and high heels. Argues that hierarchies are natural and therefore good, and anyone working against a strict hierarchy is both futile and destructive. Describes women as chaotic in nature and contrasts them to reason, which he describes as male. Argues that patriarchy is a positive organization of society and is based on merit, meaning men are just better leaders and thinkers than women. Concludes a discussion on an incel terror attack that killed 10 people, that the killer and others like him could be stopped if women were forced to engage in romantic and sexual relationships with them. Tells fans that there's nothing wrong with looking back to the 50s. In fact, he calls the well-researched book that sparked the second wave of feminism whiny, and claimed that housewives didn't appreciate their comfortable lives. Our weird guy subscribes to the Daily Wire, so he can see more of Bordan Pee Jeterson's unfairly sidelined points of view. The Daily Wire is run by Ben Shapiro and includes the work of pro-child marriage Matt Walsh. Walsh believes if we could just go back to the good old days when teenage girls who were pregnant could get married and be broodmares and homemakers and nothing else, everything would be okay. Jeterson doesn't take it that far, but he does express a frustration men have with their issues in the modern dating scene. However, Jeterson blames men, like our weird guy's trouble dating, on hypergamy. Our guy thinks Bordan Pee Jeterson is right. If girls don't like him, it must be because of hypergamy, the debunked belief that 80% of women go for the most attractive or successful 20% of men. It has nothing to do with his nosedive into reactionary culture or his unexamined beliefs about women he's carried his whole life since, he was enculturated into patriarchy and told as a smart, odd little boy that he was better than everyone and they would be sorry. If only there was a way to get women to stop doing that hypergamy thing, then he wouldn't have to be alone. But Bordan Pee Jeterson has a solution for that too, and it aligns with some of Weird Guy's Reddit community contacts. Patriarchy, Pee Jeterson says, is a good way to organize society. In fact, Pee Jeterson argues, women were happier then. So do even some female talking heads.
Women aren't happy. We're seeing women who are amazing in their careers, but they're single in their 30s. It's not really happiness. Like, I would rather, and I'm gonna say this here, I would rather be so happily married and satisfied in a marriage than be the best CEO, because I know that it doesn't work. And the older I get, the more I understand that as a woman, and I think a lot of women are understanding that too.
And this is why girls are utterly confused nowadays because, men that want to sleep with women will say, oh, your body count doesn't matter, when they know damn well they're just trying to deal with that girl for the night. They're not trying to wife her. And they'll say, I'll date, thicker women when they know that damn well they're just dealing with her for the night. They're not trying to wife her. And the problem is women are validated in the short term.
Members of the tradwife movement like to talk about it too. And our weird guy is smart, and he believes in the validity of capitalism. With his brains, he reasons, he will be able to take care of a trad wife, and she would be happier than a woman who wasn't financially dependent on a man. They're even saying so themselves. The only reason, according to Pee Jeterson and Weird Guy, that our weird guy is alone in his basement, browsing Reddit having dropped out of college, is second wave feminism. If all these women hadn't ruined the college market and the workforce, our guy would be happy. This is what some of the replies to the now infamous tweet mean when they say that the right promises men a wife and children. Men who follow right-wing figures like Jeterson and Musk see the left through the eyes of their culture warrior heroes. They see the left as hating motherhood and children and hating men for the simple fact of being male. To them, the left wants to steal their idyllic cottagecore dreams that in reality are shared by a weird girl with a bandana with whom he won't engage because she's a vegan forager with an environmental science degree. So what does our guy do now? Well, there's plenty of options. He could yearn after a non-existent trad wife until he finds one that, exists. Women aren't immune to internalizing ideologies of patriarchy. However, Weird Guy's path to trad happiness isn't quite so simple as a man whose personality is more suited to the top G or liver king nature trad type lifestyle. He isn't the rough and tough model of masculinity women are taught to want, so maybe she rejects him and he goes incel. If he does, go to the timestamp on screen. Keep playing if they get together and set up a 50s-style nuclear family structure. She'll stay home and support his inventive technologist lifestyle as an IT guy who wants to develop indie games on the side. For this 50s-style nuclear family ideal to work, our guy must make enough money to support himself, his partner, and their children all on his own. And the economy isn't like that anymore unless he's seeing the type of money real inventive types don't make. Keep playing if the trad wife gets a job. Skip to the timestamp on the screen if she leaves him. A trad wife's new job leads to resentment from both parties and an unhappy marriage when she continues to do all the housework and childcare on top of her job. It's not an uncommon situation in modern suburbia. A woman living with a misogynist who hates her inability to live up to a perfect ideal of a happy housewife just as much as she hates his inability to live up to the ideal of a perfect provider, or even, at the very least, do the fucking dishes. Or she leaves him for someone who can financially support her desire to stay home. Weird guy's introversion and eccentricity leave him without a support network in a world that doesn't offer community to many of its atomized denizens. Our weird guy falls further down the pipeline until he has nothing to lose. Go to the timestamp on screen. He wakes up alone every day in a world without love or the possibility of it, which, while caused by existing structures and his own radicalization, he blames on modernity and feminism. How does one stinky man save others like him, even if he can't save himself? To his age-chanified brain, the only options are to kill himself, or live out his days in misery, unless something interrupts his freefall into the void that is modern masculinity. So, now I can hear the 2016 Twitter thread left in the back of my ears, slowly screaming at my 15-year-old self. It's not my job to educate you, but here's the thing. To look at this from a materialist perspective, it might not be our job, but if we don't engage with weird guys, who's left to engage with them? Elon Musk, Bordan Pee Jeterson, and all of those bros. The material effects of refusing to engage with weird guys is just reinforcing their beliefs about women, about the left, and pulling them deeper down the rabbit hole. So we need to figure out a way to engage with them, to have and find community with them while avoiding the pitfalls, especially for women, of becoming their mommy. Well, we're kind of unfairly forced into the situation where some of us do have to be close to being mommy. Women shouldn't have to hold our oppressors' hands through tough conversations and experiences, but humans, and especially those in positions of power, will respond better to kindness. So, ladies, hold your own space. Don't kowtow as we make room for these weird guys in our conversations. But if you yell, "Educate yourself, shitlord," at someone, chances are the first thing they find when they Google is a fucking PragerU video. Step 1. Bring back the big tent left. Now, the way that Americans conceptualize the left nowadays is very much a small tent focused on identity politics. Now, the left should be a big tent. We want to make things better for everyone, generally, especially when it comes to workers' rights. That doesn't mean that we should excuse misogyny, but it means that when advocating class interests, we need to be inclusive, especially in an age where fewer and fewer men are accessing college educations, which is, under our capitalist framework, a class gateway. And no one's gonna like this, but hear me out. Debate, Lord, and do it well. As in, do it in a way that appeals to them. Be clear and be calm. Yeah, I know. But if it's a public debate and you have a platform, debates like that tend to be for the audience. So if you can dispel myths about hysterical feminists to the young boys watching by being calm, it matters. And if it's a one-on-one discussion, the person is more likely to consider what you're saying since they're not publicly staking their reputation on being right or winning in a debate. So the same thing applies, but instead of being calm and clear for the audience, you should be calm and clear for your conversation partner / debate opponent. Okay, calm and clarity. Having emotions is not a character flaw, especially if the situation you're discussing applies to you personally or to someone that you love or that you care about and your conversation partner is advocating harm to them. But sometimes it is a beat them at their own game thing, because a brainwashed asshole is just going to take you crying in a discussion about our culture because of your own experiences of SA as a confirmation that feminists are over emotional. So if this happens, I would just excuse myself and offer to continue the conversation later when you're in a better frame of mind. Or if you don't ever feel up to that, don't ever feel willing to put your trauma on a plate for some dude to eat, and that's fine. Send them to continue the conversation with someone you feel could handle it if you know that person or able to contact them, or just offer them resources. I can put some, I guess, if you ask me, contact me on TikTok. I will get some people that do a good job of explaining some of the general things that weird guys get mad about. For my dudes, for my brochalists, for my Hasanabi heads, if you are a man on the left, please talk to other men. Don't drop your politics. Don't drop your concern for other people when you walk into the gym or when you walk into the bar. Don't perform caring in front of women so that you can get laid or whatever, or even so that you can have social capital in that situation and not social capital, and, you know, put it away so that you can keep your social capital in a situation with the boys. Please. They listen to you way more than they listen to a blonde girl wearing 1920s 2019 Joker makeup that's sparkly and also not very well done. As we are engaging on our journey of debate lording, let's allow for mistakes. Yeah, I know, cancel culture is kind of a myth-ish, since when male celebrities, you know, assault someone, they can take a break, tell everyone that they found God, meditated, did yoga with dolphins, and come back in a year with more money, more fans, and more awards because those people are like, yeah, we're getting cancel culture by being a fan of this guy now. But interpersonally, on an interpersonal level within like friend groups and circles and even Twitter circles-ish might be an extension of this. Many people on the left can behave puritanically and condemn anyone who says or does the wrong thing. And we need to understand that many people are products of their environments and that people's views can change. And we shouldn't quit talking to someone if they mess up. And finally, I don't know. I am not an authority on this if you couldn't tell by the bad Joker makeup. I am a weird college student who likes to yell at a camera. And I would love to hear if anyone else has any more ideas for deprogramming weird guys, talking to them, engaging with them, because there are so many of them in my life that I love dearly and I care about deeply. And I'm a weird girl myself. I know what it's like to be on the outs in general conversation, for saying the wrong thing, for missing a cue, for having a niche interest. And I want to engage with these weird guys, but spending long periods of time around misogynists is a little tiring. Little bit. So it's something that I think we should undertake. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with the tweeter fully. Side note, I feel super bad for the person who wrote this tweet, because I'm sure they didn't expect for it to blow up so much and become such a subject of discussion and even have way, way bigger creators than me. I mean, someone who has like 20 fucking subscribers is a bigger creator than me. But like Hassan and stuff making videos about it. So yeah. I love weird guys. We need to create a world where being a weird person doesn't automatically mean that you exist in a basement, a box, a tiny, greasy, dark corner online where well, the Nazi dudes start showing up and they're the only ones who are kind to you. Till next time, Batman.